Okay, so for our latest project, we're going to be taking a look at this very cool Technics car stereo. This is model CQR 9550EU. And this unit comes from my friend Daniel in North Carolina. You may remember I got my Clarion car stereo from him after doing some work on another piece. He has a huge eBay store and he collects all brands of vintage car audio. And so we were talking about things that he has that are kind of unique or maybe I've never seen before. And this Technics came up and I'm like, I definitely want to work on it. Please send it to me. And so he did, and we're going to take a look at it in this video. Apparently we have a dead unit. The lower portion of this is a touch screen, and so I'm real excited about that. Of course, I've worked on tons of Panasonic car stereos, but never seen one under the Technics name. So I think that'll be pretty exciting for us if we can get this up and going and actually get a tape in it and get it working. So as always, we'll come in, we'll take a look at the buttons and features on it. Not a lot to look at since everything's kind of done through that touch screen right there, but we'll check out what connections they provided in the back as well. As for our intro music this time, we're going to go back to 1984 for Rat's masterpiece album, Out of the Cellar. And we're going to listen to one of my favorite songs on this called You're in Trouble. And then we'll get started on the Technics.
It's what you're going through. And you're on the top, we'll top of the night.
All right, let's go ahead and pick back up. We'll take a quick look at it. Not much to see here. Looks like all the action is happening in this touch screen area. But over here on the left, there's an up and down key, obviously. Most likely for volume, I would assume. There's an attenuator switch here, which doubles as a dimmer. And then we have a clock, I guess, CLK, and then a loudness switch. Tape door for the cassette seems fine. And then to the right, eject and power. And you can see some graphics there kind of built into the display. And that is pretty much it. As for the back of it, not a lot of wires here. There's a DIN connection. There's also one set of preamp outs. And then this female socket here is for the CD changer. You can use a CD changer with this. And then, of course, you know, you got your standard ignition, backup, and then two speaker wires here. According to the diagram on the top, you can run it with obviously just the two speakers, or you can do two speakers and preamp out for 4 channels. So I assume the fader would balance between the speakers and the preamp out. I'm not sure what this one would be for, unless it's for an additional set of preamp outs. I mean, there's a lot of pins there, so I'm not sure exactly what that's all about. When he sent this to me, I took the top off and had a look to see if the mechanism looked complete. It did. I did notice there's a screw missing right here. Of course, he buys these used. Who knows what's been done to it. I noticed the bottom panel of it does come off. I took it off. I noticed some soldering had been done in one area. So that's always a red flag to me as far as what somebody has done to it. I know what my capabilities are, but I don't know what anyone else's is, so it's always a concern of what they may have done. So I think the first thing I want to do, let's go ahead and get the top of it off. I believe the cassette mechanism should just come out with a few screws. Let's get that off so we can look down in there and see if there's anything obvious about what might be going on, and we'll go from there. I'm recovering from a sinus infection. I feel perfectly fine, but I know my voice is still a little twacked out, so sorry you have to deal with that. But yeah, I would love to get this up and going and get this running and see what this thing looks like with this face all lit up. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll get the top cover off and get the cassette mechanism out of it, and we'll have another look at it. All right, let's go ahead and come back in. We'll take a quick look at the cassette mechanism. 4 screws that comes right out, a couple of plugs. One of the things that I noticed about this is that the belt is surprisingly in good shape. I don't see any indentions in this. The belt looks like it may have been changed definitely before. I can't imagine this being the original belt that came in it, because it looks very good. Over on this side next to the heads, we have a small circuit board with a preamp chip here. So they kind of, made the head amp basically right on the circuit board that they put right next to the heads. The head switching portion of this, boy, it looks intense. It would not break my heart if I don't have to take any of that apart and work on that. And then we have another little small circuit board here that's coming over and running into a solenoid, I think, down in here, right here. Notice when I took this out, I had to kind of very cautiously remove this little lever. I think this pulls the flip door open, I think, because it kind of works in conjunction with eject. You can see that there, but I don't, obviously the eject on the front of the stereo is a soft touch control. So I'm going to say that's probably what that's for, to pull the flip door open. But otherwise, yeah, this looks really, really good for the age. So we'll put that off to the side for now, and then we'll bring back this. And I went ahead and took the bottom part off as well. And the thing that caught my eye was right here. There's some solder work went on right there. Doesn't look too good. And then over here, where the connector comes in, I don't know what's happening right there. Let's go ahead and turn it over, and I'll show you where that solder work is right here. You can see they have a transistor right there, right in the power supply. Of course, this thing doesn't want to agree to show it very tight. But what may have occurred here, or what looks like may have occurred, is the transistor was taken out, and perhaps the center pin of it broke off, and they tried to reattach it to the heatsink portion of the transistor. So that's a concern right away. I'm going to pull that out of there and see if I have one we can put in there. Even if that transistor's okay, I definitely wouldn't want to leave it in there like that. This unit does use an infrared remote control. This is a fiber optic cable running into this box right here, and there's an IR sensor in there. I took this off so I could look down in there and see if the amp chip had a hole in it. I didn't see one, but I might be taking this back off again to look at the edge right here where the soldering was done. It looks like there's been a little bit of soldering right there on the edge too. So I want to get it all cleaned back up, back to the way that it was, and then go from there to pursue the no power problem. But that seems to be the only work that I see that was done. I don't see anything else. There's a resistor right here that looks a little bit stressed, so that would be an area we would want to go to. I don't know what this is unless it's just a standoff. I think it's just a standoff. I don't see any caps with leakage or anything like that so far, just kind of looking around in here. So I think the first thing, let's go ahead and get this transistor out of here and identify what it is. And more importantly, see if I have one that we can put in place of it, at the very least, maybe a substitute that we can stick in there, because I'm not convinced. That might be okay, but that's not going to work for me. That's going to have to come out. So let me go ahead. I'm going to pull that out of there. We'll identify what it is and see if I have one that we can put back in there. So give me a moment for that and we'll pick back up. All right, let's bring you back in and get you caught up on what I've been doing here, kind of looking this thing over. Very first thing probably want to do here is see if we can get a fix on this transistor. This caught my eye right away, the way they have kind of soldered a pin onto the back of this. I don't believe, well, first of all, the transistor checks good, but just the way the leads are, I think this may have been a surface mount that they substituted in and basically just soldered a pin on the back of it. But I found a couple other things here. Let's see. Found a couple of traces that were damaged. The first one is the ground right here, and there's a two trace junction where I've got it kind of bridged right here. It goes back over to the ground, which goes to the actual ground wire of the radio over here. And then this one is for the remote turn-on line. You can see the trace right there. I didn't even notice it, but I was cleaning this up a little bit, and the Q-tip swiped over here, and I noticed that this trace is burnt up. So that goes right there. And then, of course, I cleaned up the area where I took that transistor out of. And I tried it with that transistor in it, and it don't work. So I got the red light illuminated on the power switch, but that is it. That is all I have. So I'm thinking that I want to try, I don't have this transistor. I don't have this exact transistor, but I do have one that I think will work. This is a B1184, and what I'm thinking of putting in there is this one, which is a B1202. A little different specs. Of course, if it works, we won't leave it in there. All we're trying to do is figure out if we can get it to turn on. So I think I'm going to go ahead and slip that one in there real quick. I'll bring you back if there's anything exciting, whether it works or whether it don't work, or whether it goes up in smoke. I'll bring you back and let you know. But for everything else I've been through, I went ahead and took the collar off of that amp IC in the back here, just to confirm that there wasn't anything damaged with that. It is perfectly fine from what I can tell. Again, just kind of going through capacitors and stuff. There's no obvious leakage. There's no trace damage. There's no nothing. This resistor checks in spec to what it's supposed to be. It's a 5.6 K resistor, and it's very, very slightly off, but not enough to raise any alarm bells. So I think we're okay there. This transistor that was right next to the one in question checks perfectly fine. So honestly, I'm not sure what's happening, other than the fact that that transistor maybe is not even the right one. You know, who knows? There's no service manual online for this that I could find, and so right now I'm just kind of shooting in the dark. So I don't think we have anything to lose. I'm going to put that transistor in. If it's drawing excessive current, I'll see it on the power supply and abort mission immediately before we have any problems. So let me go ahead and do that. Then I'll bring you back and let you know what I found out. All right, let's go ahead and pick back up. I'm going to get you caught up on what I have found out. I went ahead and dropped in that 2SB1202 transistor. You see it down there on the left, right here. And I got the exact same result. Did have the red light on my power switch, but absolutely no output. no switching function whatsoever. And so both of them, even though that other transistor, the one that's in there, I do believe that this is definitely the wrong type. It may be the right transistor, but it is definitely the wrong type of transistor. This is one that somebody probably substituted in because they didn't have the correct one in the style that I have down here. But the thing is that I should still have something happening here. So what I decided to do is I went ahead and removed this small circuit board right here that was stuck right down here in the back. And I got to looking around in there, and you can see we've got a resistor down there that's burned up pretty much right in half. That's a pretty good look at it right there. Now it's burned up enough to where obviously I can't tell from this angle without taking that out of the board what it is. I might be able to tell what it is. It's possible it could be just like this one in the front right here, which is a 5.6 ohm resistor. And if that's the case and we can tell, then we'll stick one in there and see if we can get it to turn on. But at this point, ain't gonna be able to do anything until we get it out of there and see if I can identify it. So I'm gonna take it out. If we can identify what it is, we'll go ahead and put one in there and see if we can get it to turn on. If I can't identify it, given the fact that the transistor is kind of wonky and I got a burn up resistor I can't identify, we'll have to get a service manual. And they do have one on eBay. I can't find one online anywhere, but they have one on eBay for I think about 12 bucks. So I'd definitely be willing to buy it and get this thing fixed, so I would know for sure what transistor is supposed to be in there. So let me get that out and see if I can figure out what value that resistor is, and we can stick one in there. So give me a second for that and I'll pick back up with you. All right, let's go ahead and pick back up. We're gonna fast forward down the road about a week since the last clip was made. And at that time, we had found a burned up resistor in the back of the radio. We figured was probably a power supply line. I was able to get it out. And as you can see, it's burned thoroughly all the way around. There was only one identifying character left on it, and that was the number 7, which basically told me what I pretty much already knew, that it was a low ohmage resistor, either 2.7 ohms, 4.7 ohms, 27 ohms, or 47 ohms. In the power supply there. But since I didn't know, and since I was on the fence about what transistor Q701 really was, maybe the one that was in there wasn't even the right one, I decided to go ahead and buy the service manual that was for sale on eBay. And because of the shipping method that seller was using, I knew that manual would take 10 days to get to me. So after I bought it, I asked him if he would take a couple of snapshots for me, and he was nice enough to do that and send them. And so I got the information that I really wanted to have. Our 703 is a 2.7 ohm resistor, and the true identity of Q701 is a 2SA1244. So the transistor they put in there actually is a good substitute for that. It's just the wrong type of transistor. And of course the one that I put in there, which is a 2SB1202, is also a good substitute. So the transistor I put in there can stay. That won't be any problem whatsoever. I went ahead and replaced the 2.7 ohm resistor in the back here. And just like I have right now, I had my red indicator on my power light, but it still wouldn't turn on. And even though I had kind of a limited picture of the schematic here, basically this 2.7 ohm resistor is feeding VCC into these two transistors. And that still shouldn't make the radio not come on. That's why I was kind of confused before I had this as to why it wouldn't turn on. So even if you left that burn up resistor in there, the tuner wouldn't work, but the radio should still turn on. So once I got to the point where I was like, I'm not sure what's happening with it and why it's not turning on, I started looking around in the microprocessor circuitry, and in particular, this had caught my eye earlier. Is we have a permanent install radio here with a constant 12 volt line for memory backup, but why do we have a battery here? And that's a 3 volt battery, And the reason that that battery is there is because this radio has the ability to set an anti-theft code in it. And if the car were to lose power altogether, we would still need that battery in order to retain the code in the radio. Or at least that's what I believe, based on what information that I have so far. So I think that there was something kind of funky going on with that. I got underneath the radio, did some checks on that battery, found out that that battery has less than a volt in it. In the process of checking that battery, I noticed that there was a chip resistor right there that was a little funky looking, like maybe somebody had tried to solder on it. I touched up the connections of that, and all of a sudden afterwards the radio turned on and started working. So I don't know if that was just coincidence or not, but it has turned on and it has worked ever since I did that. But I know one thing's for sure, I most definitely want to change this battery, and I also want to change the belt, because after taking the belt off, there is an indentation in it that's warranting me replacing the belt in the tape deck. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to cut the video off here as a part 1 video, and in part 2 we'll finish up the work I want to do here, changing this battery out, and also we'll finish, get the tape deck up and going and make sure there's not an issue with that. I got the radio running on the 2 speakers for the internal power. And it is a very, very cool radio. There is no question about that. All backlit with a fluorescent tube. There's a fluorescent tube back there, pretty much just like the one in that Sony EQ I did work on, that lights all of this up. And of course, there's a little touch screen over the front of the LCD panel. And if you want to set a code in this radio, you can do it by pressing and holding this down. The radio will turn off. It'll ask you for the code. Of course, 000 is default. There's no code set, but you can set one. And once you do that, you have to have the code to turn the radio back on, even after a power loss. So I was able to kind of simulate the failure I had in the beginning with the radio not turning on. So in essence, even with their substitute transistor in it, even with the burn-up resistor in it, the only thing that I did, there was a ground on the bottom of the radio that was not connected. So in the beginning, I don't believe I had the power light, the red power light here. And I think it was because that ground was missing. But even with all those things, the substitute transistor and the burn-up resistor, the radio still should have worked. So that was kind of a puzzling thing. But I think it had something to do with that battery. I think it had something to do with the radio being maybe stuck in between modes because the battery was low. I'm not exactly sure. But I do know that it's up and it's working now. And we're going to finish it up in part 2. Again, very cool radio. The internal power of the radio is very strong. It will light up a couple of speakers very nicely. And I was also able to determine that these 2 RCAs right here are the input for the CD changer. The RCA line outs are done through this DIN connection and this board. So I think what we're going to do is call this a part 1. We'll pick back up in about a week after I get that battery, and we'll finish it up in part 2, change the belt in the tape deck, put it all back together, and send it on its way. So as always, I want to thank you guys very much. Appreciate you checking out the video this time, as well as all the videos on the channel. And we will definitely catch you on part 2 of the Technics Car Stereo.